Hello, everyone. My name is Lynn Crawford. I'm with the Hope Dementia Support Groups, and I am so pleased to introduce to you Colleen Storey. She is the Supervisor of Hospice Outreach and Hope Bereavement Services. She's worked at PeaceHealth for the past 6 years. She's earned her Master's of Social Work through Arizona State University with her focus on bereavement and grief. Colleen is also a certified grief recovery specialist. She facilitates numerous grief support groups at Hope Bereavement Services. Such groups include Pathways, an adult support group, Survivor of Suicide Loss support group, Stepping Stones, a program for helping children 4 through 19 years of age through their grief after the death of a family member or a friend. Colleen also works with clients one-on-one. So our discussion today will be Alzheimer's and dementia, living with anticipatory grief. If you'll notice at the bottom of your screen, there is a box that says Q&A. If you have questions that come up while Colleen is talking, please put them there and we'll ask her to answer them when her presentation is completed. So, Colleen, it's yours.
Well, thank you very much for that introduction. I'm so happy to be here tonight, and I have walked this journey myself. So I'm really happy that you've asked me here because I, even as a bereavement counselor, struggled with my journey. So what I'd like to do to start off is to define grief, because oftentimes people don't really know what grief means. And Julie, can you get to that slide? One more down. Great, thank you. So defining grief. So grief is what we normally find when we look for the definition of grief. It's the normal response to a loss. I've added in the emotional, that's why it's in red, because grief really is about our emotions, not about our intellect. And oftentimes individuals will say, don't feel so bad, it's okay, you know, they're no longer in pain, or, you know, it's all right, you'll be okay. Well, inside, I mean, logically, we might know this to be true, but oftentimes loss really is about our emotional response. So it's really about our heart space, about our feelings. And so it is grief is the thoughts and feelings experienced within. So this means bereavement, you know, you hear the word bereavement, and that's our outward expression. That's our crying, that's our funeral. Those are all of our rituals that people can look at and see. But our grief is our thoughts and feelings. These are the processes. These are the things that are going inside of our brain, in our mind, and in our hearts that people don't see. They're emotional, there's physical responses, there's mental and spiritual and social reactions, all to a loss. And I want to take a second here and define loss, because oftentimes when I ask people, what is the definition of loss? And they'll say, well, loss is a death. And that's true. But loss is also many other things. Loss is about, it could be the loss of a home. It could be a loss of a job. It could be loss of our health. It could be financial loss. There are multitude of losses where we can experience grief. It doesn't have to do with a death, though death is definitely a loss. Grief is also very unique to the individual. And this is really important because oftentimes we'll hear, well, this is, I know exactly how you feel, Marge. You know, I know exactly, you know, I lost my husband 20 years ago. I know exactly how you feel. But that's not really true. They don't know exactly what we're feeling inside ourselves. And it to the person who's going through the grief, it almost sounds like somebody's trying to one-up us. And they're not, they're trying to relate. But again, it's very unique to each individual. And what makes it unique is the relationship. My mother had 5 children. Each one of us had a completely separate relationship with mom. Mine was so much different than my brothers or younger sisters. So that's going to impact our amount of our grief. It's because it's unique. Our relationship with the individual is unique. There is no timetable, oh my gosh, to complete our grief responses. There are definitely no timetables. You know, I think they give us 3 days at work and then we come back to work. Or, you know, you're talking to somebody and they'll go, well, didn't your mom die 6 months ago? It's like, yes. Well, wow, you're still talking about that? It's like, again, they'll tell me that she's in a better place or she's not suffering anymore, which intellectually is true. I kind of get that. But again, we're going back to the emotional response. So it's a process. Grief is a process. It's not a one-time event, bam, somebody we love dies, or we have a loss of a job and we experience and bam, it's over and we move on. It's a process because again, I'm going to tie it back throughout this whole thing. It's emotional response. So, next slide, Julie. So again, I'm going to go back to the Grief Recovery Institute. This is how they define grief. And I really, really wanted to share this with you. Grief, the response to the loss of hopes, dreams, and expectations. So this is in a relationship, especially with dealing with dementia and Alzheimer's, that the response to the loss of hopes and dreams. You know, we all have hopes and dreams and expectations on how our lives are going to go, right? You know, we're going to retire and we're going to travel and we've raised our children. And there's certain hopes and dreams that we write our stories that we want to follow through on. And a loss happens that prevents this from happening. And another way that they will define grief is the conflicting feelings caused by the end of a change or a familiar pattern of behavior. So for instance, I've worked for 7 years for PeaceHealth. At the end of the day, I go upstairs and they go, gee, Colleen, it's been great, but thanks, but no thanks. And they give me my pink slip, right? And it's like, wow, I've lost my job. And it's a familiar pattern to me. I get up every day, get ready for work, go into work. For 7 years, I've done 5 days a week going into work. And now I don't have this job. Or I've had a relationship. Sometimes individuals can be in an abusive marriage. And there's a death or a divorce. And that divorce is a change of a familiar pattern. And it's a conflicting feeling where maybe we're happy that it's ended, but yet there's all of the unknown, all of the familiar pattern that we're used to. All of a sudden that's been pulled out from underneath us, and it leaves us questioning and wondering and going, well, this isn't what I had expected. These weren't my expectations in this marriage. And the loss of hopes and dreams, maybe in an abusive situation, you were always hoping that maybe, just maybe, they would get the help that they needed and wouldn't be so angry all the time. So you can see how this plays into, can we go to the next slide, Julie? Thank you. So the anticipatory grief. So this is the grief that occurs when one anticipates a death coming up. It's also the adjusting to the idea that someone we love is dying or changing. Grief is related to the past, current, and future losses. So when I go back to say that it's hopes and dreams, the loss of hopes and dreams and expectations, this is the past, current, and the future, all rolled into one. So where we're looking at the past, we were hoping that this was going to be our future, and currently is none of those things, and we're not even working towards that. We're going to grieve. It's a loss. It's an emotional loss to an upcoming death that we know at some point, or an upcoming loss that has impacted us. And the dynamics of anticipatory grief is very similar to grief after death. It truly is. There's not much difference at all. So can we go to the next one? So I want to talk about the exploring the losses associated, because there are a lot of losses, as you all probably know. So the individual that's facing the dementia, they're experiencing losses as this process goes forward. So some of their losses, that's Julie, that's on the next slide, is the loss of memory. They're dealing with the loss of memory. I know that my mother knew something was wrong. She couldn't quite pinpoint what it was. She did a really good job at hiding it for a very long time because she knew something wasn't right. And then they have a loss of role, the importance of where they are, a standing, whether it's in a job in our community, whether it's a role in the household, taking that leading role where you're making the decisions in that, and now you're not doing that anymore. People are trying to tell you what you need to do. The loss of autonomy, being able to decide, hey, I'm going to get in the car and I'm going to go to the store. No, you're not. We don't even have a car anymore for you to drive. Well, where's the car? I want to go down to the store. And then ultimately, they face the loss of that identity and selfhood of, you know, who they are in the grand scheme of things, and their identity. So then on the next slide, with the dementia and Alzheimer's, let's look at what family and friends. Let's look at the losses that they have. So a loss of the person that we knew and loved, right? As well as any hopes and dreams and expectations, again, about the future. All of that kind of disappears slowly but surely. And we have to start making adjustments. In the beginning, it's especially hard because, you know, it just depends on where they're at, of course, in the disease process. I've worked with families that have lost homes because they have used all their money paying for a facility for their loved one to be in, and they have lost their home. Loss of social networks. And this is so important. It's going to play a major role throughout the whole process, because all of a sudden, if we're found one as a caregiver, we aren't so free to get up and go and do the things that we want to do. And so we're constantly telling our friends, oh, I'd love to, but I can't go. You know, I'm unable. I need to stay home, take care of things at home, take care of Bob. No, I can't go. And we finally, you know, they stop asking, because I go, well, we could ask Marge, but she's not going to want to go because she'll want to stay home and she's not going out these days. And not only that, but my mother and all of us girls basically lost a lot of our family and friends that would come over. And it's like, oh, she's acting a little strange. I don't know what to say. It's just kind of weird. And you can't carry on a normal conversation with her anymore. And all the girls want to talk about is their mom and the changes. And you know what? This is hitting close to home. And dang, this is something that could maybe happen to me. It's like, oh, I don't know. I'm uncomfortable going around. I don't know what to say when I go there. And so people just start backing away and we lose our supports. And because we're no longer going to Bridge Club, or maybe we're no longer going to church because we can't. And it's like almost out of sight, out of mind. We just kind of fall off the social network. Not that people really mean to do that, but this is what happens. And other important sources of identity and support: working. Some people have to give up their jobs to stay home and be a caregiver. Or maybe they work part-time as a teacher at Clark College and they can no longer go there and take on that role because they get off work at 5 o'clock and they really need to go to the facility and spend time with their loved one. So this is, I mean, when you start looking at all of these losses, you can see when you go back that it is indeed, grief is the emotional response to a loss. And we are all faced with a lot of losses. So I had mentioned earlier that the typical responses to anticipatory grief are much like those after the death of a loved one. So that's 2 slides ahead, Julie. Might be 3, I'm not sure where you're at. Yep, 2 slides ahead. So, oh, no, go back 1, sorry. So the emotional responses, this is how one feels in our emotion, okay? So disbelief and denial. It is a common response that one may just go, I can't believe this is happening. No, this can't be happening. They're not as bad as that people think he is. You know, he's doing okay. Things aren't as bad as what we think, you know. And so we kind of are in that disbelief, denial. And that's the same with the death. You know, I can't believe this has happened. They're here 1 minute and then now they're not. The feeling of being overwhelmed. When we have a lot of losses and lose our support systems that we're accustomed to, when we're giving up our hopes and dreams and expectations of this life that we wanted to create, it is overwhelming. I don't know anyone who has gone through this process who has not expressed the feelings of being overwhelmed. Because now we're the sole decision maker now in a lot of cases. I mean, we used to have a partner that we used to be able to bounce it off. Or maybe it's our parent and, you know, siblings and them maybe aren't as active. And so now you have to do that. And now you've got to go through all of the Medicare, Medicaid process, find a facility if you need facility. Look for caregivers. And you're working, on the side too. You're still working and you're trying to interview caregivers. And it is so much. Now you have to ask the doctors all of the different questions. And remember to ask the questions. So it can be so overwhelming. And then worry and anxiety, am I doing it right? Am I making the right decisions? And that falls right into the fear. What if I'm not? What if I run out of money? What if I put them in a wrong place? What if? A lot of that fear will pull right into us. Sadness. You're going to be sad watching your loved one fade out. You're going to have feelings of being sad. These are normal. Totally normal to be unprepared for all of this. Because, oh my gosh, you don't know what you don't know. And now you're in this position and you're going, wow, there's a lot that I got to think about and I'm not prepared. And oftentimes, in the case of my mom, she made sure I wasn't prepared because there was nothing wrong with her. And it was quite the journey. Anger. Anger is a very valid and typical emotional response to a loss. Anger can be a great motivator to get things done. The thing with the anger is that we're almost like human teapots, okay? We have all these different emotions listed here. They're all going on inside of us. All of these emotions and all of these feelings, and we're trying to deal with them, and it's exhausting. And you know what? Anger is going to creep in regardless, under the best circumstances. But it's okay. Anger is a valid emotional response. How we handle the anger, however, that's where we can get into a little bit of trouble. That feeling of helplessness, that it's just so overwhelming, so many decisions. We're not sure if they're the right ones. And, we're still battling the denial or disbelief that all of this is even happening. And that feeling of helplessness. I mean, I just can't get it all done. Or I just don't know what to do. And I don't know who to talk to. It's just so overwhelming. And then there's guilt and regret that plays into these emotional responses. I don't necessarily like the word guilt. I like people to use the word regret because, but we all have those. As soon as anyone in our life passes away, the first thing a human does is that they go back and look at their all the woulda, coulda, shouldas. I wish I would have done this. I could have done that. What if I done this? It's immediately where we go. We start looking at all of the time wasted. It's like, oh, I could have done this. I should have done this. What if I'd only done this? Then maybe they wouldn't have got sick at all. If I'd been a better spouse, if I'd been this, better provider, whatever the case may be. But these are just regrets. But it can play havoc on our emotional well-being and in our responses. We also have physical responses. And so that's the next slide, Julie. So that the physical response is sleep changes. Either we're going to sleep a whole lot or we're not going to sleep at all because we're so anxiety ridden. Headaches, indigestion, nausea feeling, fatigue. Well, that'll probably go right along with the sleep changes, and appetite changes. We're tired, we're cranky, we're kind of nauseous. We don't have time to eat. We eat on the fly. We're not eating healthy. And a little bit later, I will go into ways to combat these responses. But those are very typical physical responses that one has. There are physical body's responses. Then we have our cognitive responses. And this is how cognitive is how our brains think. And that's on the next slide, Julie. So the cognitive responses is being disorganized. Oh my gosh. Being overwhelmed, anxiety, throw in a little bit of anger and denial. Yeah, we're going to be kind of unorganized. Disorganized, can't, lack of concentration, not being able to totally focus on something. Confusion, it's like, where did I put my keys? And you find them later in the freezer. It's like, oh my gosh, how did they get there? Forgetfulness, just forgetting to do things. Because all of these emotions, all of these things are going on inside our teapot minds, and we're not really, as you turn on a teapot and the steam heats up the water and all the molecules start moving around. Well, this is what happens to us. We have all this anxiety going on and all being overwhelmed and all of that. And it's like our thought is right here. And it's like, oh, I need to do, and then it goes over here. It's like, I need to do something. What was that again? Oh, yeah. I need to do this. I need to call the doctor or wait, did I call the doctor? Do we have an appointment already? All of these are so typical. You're not going crazy. People think that they're going crazy. You're not. You just need to take a breather out. And we'll talk about how we can combat some of this. We also have spiritual responses. And these are the responses to your beliefs or your philosophy. Oftentimes, your belief system can change. It's not fulfilling what you need, or maybe the church isn't there to help and you're coming disenfranchised with them for whatever reason. Other people get a lot of comfort in their faith. This is where they're able to hold on and get inspiration and get faith. Some people are angry. They're angry at God or a higher power. How could you do this? You know what our plans were. We've been good. We've been devout. And now you've done this. And be angry at God. And I tell people, it's okay. It's all right if you're angry at God. God's got really broad shoulders and he understands pain and confusion. He understands that. It's okay to be angry for a while. Renewed relationship. Some people lean really heavy into God. I mean, they renew their faith in their relationship, and it's what's seeing them through. And then hope for a peaceful death. We all just want to see this end peacefully. So some other responses that fall into a mishmash of responses, it's the next slide, Julie, are family dynamics. I worked extremely hard to make sure that I kept the relationship with my siblings. I was the only one who took care of my mom, so I had to work really hard because I have counseled so many people where the family just falls apart. They literally just fall apart, and they're angry and they don't talk to each other, and sometimes they haven't talked in years. So I had to work really, really hard. Behavioral responses. I mean, we're angry one minute, understanding the next, beating ourselves up because we're trying to be nice and understanding, but we're frustrated. All of those type of things are typical responses. Employment. I mean, these are losses. We have some people have to go out on FMLA, everything that they're familiar with. They're having to deal with this in some fashion or another. Financial, relationships with friends change, activities, sports, hobbies, recreational, residence, where we're living, our lifestyle, everything changes. Everything gets mixed in to the pot. When you look at it all, it's all overwhelming, I know. The nice thing is, or the bright side of this is, everyone's going to experience some of this, but not all of this. It's a variation. And like I said, the amount of grief depends literally on the relationship. What the relationship was like is how much you're going to grieve. I can tell you that I can grieve my mother much harder than a sibling of mine. Because my relationship was way different. Way different. So then moving ahead, there are 7 themes to high anticipatory grief in the caregivers taking care of their loved ones. That's the next slide, Julie. So those 7 themes, the top 2 are falling to grief reactions, yearning for the past, wanting things to be different. And then the guilt and the regret, all the woulda, coulda, shoulda things. If we get really transfixed on those, it can add a lot of turmoil to our lives. But then couple that with isolation. Like I said, friends don't come around. We don't get out to do what we want to do. We have that restricted freedom to just go and get in the car and take off, or go to Vegas with the gals, or whatever it is that you're doing. And then the regular life stressors. I'm not working now. I'm on FMLA, so I'm not getting my income in. My sisters, they should be here helping me. I don't know what kind of caregivers to get. And oh my gosh, I never knew that they were so expensive. And all of the life stressors on top of that. So these isolation, restricted freedom, and the other life stressors, they have both grief, and then because we're mourning our restricted freedoms, and then just caregiver burden and stress. Oh my gosh. And then the last 2, systemic issues. If they're in a facility, dealing with all of them, making sure, advocating for your loved one. Are they getting the medication? Are they taking care of them? Are they keeping them engaged in life? Are they happy being there? Or Medicaid forms. It's like, oh my gosh, you're filling out form after form. It's like, and you're dealing with all of that and having to every 6 months or every quarter sending in all of the information, proof of income. And it's a huge learning curve, and it adds a lot of stress. And then coping strategies. Coping strategies can also, if you don't have them, if you don't have the networks, if you don't have the social support, some people really hang on to their pets. If you don't have a pet, I was working with a lady just about a month ago who had to put down her pet in the midst of taking care of her loved one. It's just like, wow, it's just overwhelming. And I'm going to tell you in a little bit, I'm going to share my story and where I put myself in this category. So the warning signs, that's the next theme. So the warning signs that go, okay, take note of these little warning symptoms here. So extreme avoidant behavior. If you are avoiding your friends and family for a long period of time, and you're just really isolating yourself, and you really want to take note of that. And I'm going to implore you through this journey, if one friend, at least one person who really, really knows you, even if it's someone from your childhood and you haven't spoken in the last 5 or 6 years, contact them. They can come in really handy, those people that have spent a lot of time with you and who know you, because they can go, I think it'd probably be a good idea if you found a therapist, somebody to talk to. Your lack of self-care. If you're not showering in days, so you don't shower for 2 days, that's okay. That's all right. 2 days, big deal. But if it goes on a week or longer that you're not taking care of yourself, and you just don't have the energy, you don't want to get out, you're not meeting your own personal needs and hygiene, this is a warning sign to seek help. What these are is that your teapot is just too full, and you're just kind of shutting down and isolating and getting stressed, self-destructive thoughts. Now, it's not unusual for individuals to go, oh, I just soon check out. This is too difficult. It would be so much easier if I could just check out of this and not deal with that. Fleeting, like suicide thoughts. But once you start looking at, well, gee, maybe I could take this a little bit further. You start really gee, how would I end my life if I wanted to? Again, that's a flag. It's a big red flag. Talk to somebody. If we're self-harming or self-medicating, and that's down on the end there, using drugs or alcohol, it's really common that people do this, but you don't want it to become a problem. And this is where your one friend's going to come in really handy, going, I think maybe you're taking this a little to the extreme. I think maybe you need some help. And if you're just like, sadness is fine. Being sad is okay. You're going to be sad. Oh my gosh, we're watching somebody that we love disappear in front of us. We're going to be sad. But if we get to the point where we're so sad and depressed and we're not taking care of ourselves, we're not eating, we're not sleeping, that depression, anxiety, there are things that a physician can help you with. And again, red flags, look at that. So then, so what do we do about this? So I'm going to go over some self-care tips for you. Check my time. Okay, we're good. So the physical care. To take care of yourself physically, we need to eat healthy food. Oftentimes, we're really not sleeping very well. I mean, maybe we're laying, keeping an ear open for the sound from the next room. Or we wake up in the middle of the night with anxiety going, oh my gosh, did I do this? Did I send that paperwork in? Oh my gosh. Or did I do this? And now you can't turn your brain off and you're laying there, and then you finally fall asleep at 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning. You got to get up in 2 hours. So what do? We drink coffee and we go for the sugars and the carbs. The energy drinks, those are the things that keep us moving. The only problem is it keeps us moving and then we crash hard and then we need more. So we're eating the wrong foods. What will help you tremendously, and this is my Red Cross bag, is 1, we need to drink water. It is so important because if we're drinking a lot of coffee to keep us going, caffeine, we become dehydrated. And when I talked earlier about some of those responses, the concentration, the confusion, the headaches, often than not, it's because we're dehydrated. So drinking water throughout the day is your best friend. Now, whether you add lemon to it, or now they have like little drops that you can put in your water bottle to flavor if you don't like the flavor of water. I tell people to go down the Winco, and they have the little tiny kid bottles, and throw some in your front seat of your car, throw some on your nightstand, in the bathroom, in the kitchen, in the living room. Have water around. Just have it there and drink. Because if you become dehydrated, now you got headaches, you have that foggy, and you're trying to fill out paperwork, and you have that fogginess, and you can't quite see through the fog. Your joints hurt, almost like flu-like symptoms. And with all of that comes irritability and short-temperedness that later we can yell at our loved one and then later beat ourselves up in regret and guilt, because who yells at somebody when they can't help what they're asking you to do? So it's really important to drink water. The other thing that our brain needs to function properly is protein. I get if you don't want to eat a whole meal because you're just like sick to your stomach and food just doesn't sound good. I get that. But your brain needs protein to fire correctly. So hard-boiled eggs, nuts if you can eat nuts, protein shakes. You can have, I used to get the pre-made chocolate protein shakes, and then I dump a little bit of instant coffee in it and shake it up and have my morning mocha. Scrambled eggs, cheese, any types of protein. I will often tell people, go down to the grocery store, get a small deli platter where it has the cheese and the meat already sliced like for a party. Keep it in your refrigerator so when you can walk by, you can just pop a couple pieces of cheese in your mouth, or some cheese and meat. You can just kind of roll it up. You don't have to eat full meals, but your body needs water and it needs protein. Absolutely, those are the two best friends. The other thing that your body needs, and it's not under nutrition, but I'm on a roll, so I'm going with it, is oxygen. We need to breathe. And when we're under a lot of stress, in my support groups, I can go around the room and I can tell who's under a lot of stress because their shoulders are up here by their ears. They walk around like this because they're so tense, because they're holding on to so much emotion and stress that it just gets tighter and tighter. And when we're like this, it's really hard to take deep breaths. There's not a lot of room inside. So I usually teach a breathing technique. I call it 4x4 breathing, where you spend time, you just kind of quiet your mind and you take a big deep breath like through your nose, and you take in as much oxygen as you possibly can, and you hold it and you hold it and you hold it. And now your brain's screaming at you, your lungs are screaming at you to let it go. And as soon as it gets there, you don't let it out. You count to 4 very slowly, and then let it out as slow as you possibly can through your mouth. And what you're doing is that you're automatically activating our primitive brain, that fight or flight. Am I going to fight this lion to survive, or am I going to run from this lion? I got to make a choice here. And when we're not breathing and we hold it, our brain goes, whoa, 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 whoa. We're not breathing. We're not breathing. Something's wrong. We're not breathing. Do I run from the lion? Am I breathing? What do I do? We're not breathing. And then you let that breath out. And then the brain goes, whoa, Cool. Okay. It's okay, everybody. It's all right. It's good. It's all good. We're breathing again. And what the brain does, it tricks the brain into sending chemicals through our body to tell our body it's all good, relax. And you do that 4 times. And what happens is, one, it gets a lot of this that's stuck inside us, that stress and anxiety outside of us. So that helps. It gets oxygen to the brain, which it needs fuel. Most people, when they do this breathing exercise, wow, they get a head rush because their brain's not used to getting that much oxygen. It really isn't. And it's like, and then you have the concentration. It clears everything out. It pulls you in from our trying to process our past life, what that looked like, and then our worry about the future. It just kind of pulls us into this present moment, and it allows us to concentrate. It gets rid of the fog, and it allows us to concentrate on the task at hand, whether it's filling out paperwork, like whatever the case may be. And that is under the nutrition heading, I have exercise, and that's really what exercise does as well. It helps keep our muscles relaxed and moving rather than like this, because I'll tell you, you can get really stiff like this. It causes endorphins, our brain to increase the endorphins that go through the body. It relieves the stress, which relieves that what can cause disease. You know, disease, you break it down in this dis-ease. You know, we're tense, we're stressed, we're, you know, our body, we're holding all of this into our body and it's uncomfortable and our body can't work right. So this is the importance of exercise. Sleep and rest is also very important. If we can take naps, that's great. Take a nap, even if it's a 15-minute nap. If you don't think you can take a half hour, take 15 minutes, just set the timer. But we want to stay away from the caffeines. We want to stay away from all of the sugars and that keep us up. One of the first things I will ask somebody, where's your television? Because if it's in your bedroom, it needs to come out of your bedroom. I know a bunch of you are probably groaning right now, but our brain gets confused. When we go to bed, am I here to watch television, or am I here to rest, to sleep? So if you find yourself not being able to sleep and you're restless, you get up, you go to the living room, and you can either watch a television show or read. Until your body's going, okay, I'm tired. I'm not even concentrating on what I'm reading. Then you go back to bed. You have to retrain your body to go back to bed. Your television in the bedroom is not a good place. I know. And no, my television is in my living room. To relax going to bed, a hot bath, a bubble bath, a form of mindfulness. That breathing that I taught, that 4x4 breathing, helps a great deal. Meditating, sitting, and people go, oh, I can't meditate, too many thoughts come in. That's okay. That's what happens when we first start to meditate. You know, you meditate and it's like, oh yeah, I gotta take the garbage out. So you thank the garbage. Yes, acknowledge it. Yes, I'll take the garbage out. And so that thought goes away. And as soon as it goes away, another one comes in. Did you call the doctor? I didn't, but I will call the doctor first thing in the morning. Okay, that thought goes away. Now another thought comes in. But even if you're just focusing on these thoughts, it's a form of mindfulness. It's eventually those voices quiet down and you just breathe. Just sit with your eyes closed and just focus on the breath. Breathing love in, exhaling gratitude. If you can just love, gratitude, love, gratitude. Then the garbage will come in. You know, it always does, but it's okay. It helps relax your body. Stretching will help to relax your body. So these rest and sleep is really important. Take care of yourself. Mental care, it's okay. It's really okay that you're sad and that you're hurting. You can tell yourself it's okay. It's all right. You know, just to say that it's okay takes away some of the stress. You feel what you feel, but it's going to be okay. Did you know that a feeling lasts no more than 90 minutes? So if you're angry and that first burst of anger, it's like 90 minutes. So if you can pause and go, oh, I'm so angry. I'm angry at blah, 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 blah. You're going to move into another emotion. Notice what's on your mind. What is it? Look at it. Sit with that feeling. Because like I said, it's only going to last for 90 minutes. Trying to make yourself a good schedule. Always have a certain place where you keep your keys. So you always know where your keys are at. Make a list. I was the queen of the list. Did I ever accomplish a list? No. But you know what? I sure felt better because I had a list. And as I would mark some things off, I would constantly be adding more. But I could look at it and go, oh, see, it's okay. My thoughts are organized. I have a list. It's okay. And sometimes you have to be okay with going, I didn't do that. I didn't call the doctor, or I didn't get this paperwork done, or I didn't get this done, or I didn't do that. It's okay. It's okay. Because you know what? Tomorrow is still going to need to be done. It's still going to be there. But again, if we're breathing and we're eating protein and we're drinking water, that will help the mental capacity to get things done. Emotional care. So journaling is a good thing. Talking on tape, recording how you feel. Laughing is one of the best things that we can do. And you know, you can YouTube laugh yoga, and you can get online and you can do laughing yoga. And I'm telling you, it's people laughing, and you listen to it and you think, oh my God, this is so ridiculous. But you'll start chuckling along, and pretty soon you are laughing, wholeheartedly laughing. And oh, what a stress release. It gets all this out. Laughing's better than the anger, but it gets it all out and it lifts our spirits. We have to get out what's inside, what we're holding on to, all those emotions out. We have to get them outside our body. So whether that's journaling, writing music, poetry, joining a support group is extremely helpful. Reading books on other people and their stories as they have gone through this journey is very helpful, because one, you'll realize, wow, I'm not in this alone. I'm really not that isolated. And that is such a good thing. I often refer to, I have the Book of Joy with the Dalai Lama and the Archbishop Tutu. And they were asking Archbishop Tutu about isolation. And he had, the prostate cancer. And there were many times that he was really ill. And they asked him, how do you keep your spirits up? And he said in the beginning, it was really hard. He would get up in the middle of the night and quietly, not to wake his wife, and he would go downstairs. And he said, I was alone and with all of my thoughts. And he said they were starting to kind of spiral downward, kind of be sad, getting negative. And then I remembered, I'm not the only person in this country who's living with prostate cancer. Wow, in fact, I'm not the only person in this whole global community that's experiencing and living with prostate cancer. There's thousands of people living with prostate cancer. And he goes, and once I realized that there were 1,000 other people, I wasn't alone in this. I was no longer alone. I was part of a group. And when I started looking at their stories and their stories of inspiration and things that the questions that they asked doctors, and I didn't think about asking the doctor, or things that we could do, it's really inspiring. Read people's books on their journey through this Alzheimer's journey. It will really be helpful. Call a friend, call a real good friend, talk, laugh. Spiritual care, just admit if you need help and reach out for it. It's okay to call someone from your church community, or just even your spiritual care, wherever you find that. Reach out. If it's spiritual stories, if it's reading the Bible, if it's watching, oh my gosh, Touched by an Angel, any of those things that you feel that presence around you, supporting you, do this. Reach out. Reach out. So I want to talk a little bit about my story, because as you heard, for 7 years, I've been a bereavement counselor. So this is my mom, and the one in the upper left-hand corner, the color one there, is that picture where she was getting that kind of vacant look. So as a bereavement counselor, I'm sitting here and I'm talking to you what anticipatory grief is. Julie, do you want to go to the next slide? So I'm going to go back to the 7 themes of high anticipatory grief in Caregivers. I was this. Even because I'm a bereavement counselor, because I understand anticipatory grief, did not exclude me from being high risk, and I was high risk. I had my job. There were 3 bereavement counselors in my office. 2 of them, one was out on FMLA due to a family incident, and another one was out due to a car accident. So there was me, and then we brought in our relief gal, our part-time gal that was coming in as often as she could. So I had all of the groups. I had all of the one-on-ones that came in. I had to develop the program for the Stepping Stones, the children's program. Wow, I mean, I had a lot Monday through Friday. Every weekend for 3 years, I drove north to see my mom. And this was before the Alzheimer's had gotten really bad, but we could tell that there was something wrong. My sisters, none of them participated very much, rarely. Like I said, their relationship with my mom was way different. Our childhood was extremely difficult. I grew up in a household where nothing, no matter what it was ever done good enough. Nothing. Our whole lives were this way. It was never good enough. It could have been done better. You should have done it like this, whatever the case may be. But I was the one working 5 days a week, driving up every weekend to try and take care of a lady that didn't want me there, who argued and yelled at me a lot. And I experienced a lot of guilt and regret and grief because I got to the point I was tapped out. I mean, I was literally tapped out. And I knew that I could get away with yelling at my mom like I've never been able to before, because she would forget in 5 minutes. I yearned a lot for the past for, oh my, I just wanted to get back to my normal job, my normal life, and not be stuck in this movie of Groundhog's Day. It was like being stuck in Groundhog's Day. I didn't like the movie when it came out. I couldn't make it through. It was too boring. And I sure wasn't enjoying living that life. I became very isolated because I had no time for friends. I had every weekend, I was out of town, so I didn't have my church community. All of my friends, it was constantly saying, no, I can't, no, until all invitations, everything stopped. Anything that I wanted to do for myself, I couldn't do. I had really restricted freedom. Life stressors, I mean, even as a social worker, it still is, I'm combating a woman who doesn't want to be taken care of. I'm trying to find a facility. I'm trying to get caregivers when I live 2.5 hours away. Half the time they weren't showing up at the house. The neighbors were telling me, no, there hasn't been anybody here for the last 3 days. That means my mom definitely wasn't cooking or eating. She had tried to cook where she burnt her wristwatch. She melted it into her arm. I just can't even imagine how she did that. And so I would make food, TV dinners, and I would bring like simple soup, and then I thought, she can't even eat soup anymore. But I would make meals, and then I would bring up loaves of bread and peanut butter, even though she said, I don't eat peanut butter, it's fattening. But she would go through a great big jar of it in a week's time, because she'd make herself a sandwich and then forget that she ate and make herself another sandwich. The stress was just beyond. And then sitting and being present for individuals that's coming in who have had a loved one die, working with the children that had a parent or a sibling die, and being present for them. And then I would come home and I would go to bed, and I would wake up between 2 and 3 o'clock every night, panic attacks, absolute panic attacks, where I couldn't breathe. My heart would be pounding. I thought I was having a heart attack. And then I would breathe, I would calm down, and then I was up, because I couldn't turn the brain off. It wouldn't turn off. All the things that I had to do from work, am I doing all of that? What am I forgetting to do for my mom? What do I need to do? And then navigate the paperwork, trying to get on her bank account and all of that, and the life paperwork. In fact, this was the one blessing growing up in a small logging community, that when I went to the bank, my mom was beyond being able to sign the paperwork cognitively and say, yes, she knew exactly what she was doing. Oh, I don't think so. But the bank knew. The bank had been dealing with her for months, for years, bouncing checks and that. And they were so grateful that I was there, and they allowed me to do this. And it was like, oh my gosh. So my self-care, Julie, you want to turn to self-care? Now, I just told you all how to take care of yourself. There we go. Here was my self-care. Yeah. Finally, I went to the doctor and said, look, I need some diazepam. I need some Valium. I need to be able to sleep at night. So I started self-medicating with the doctor's help. I mean, I was under doctor's care. Wine became a really good friend. It became a really good friend when I would come home and try to turn my brain off. I would sit out on my deck and drink wine, lots of wine. Food became another one. I was on the road all the time. I'm not going to come home and cook healthy meals. Are you kidding me? And so I just was eating crap food, which has, I can't even tell you, like 50 pounds, 55 pounds, almost 60 that I put on during this time. A lot of weight because I wasn't eating healthy and I was eating whatever. It didn't matter to me what I was eating, and a lot of sugar because, again, it brought me up. So I felt a little bit better. Netflix was my friend. I would just sit and binge watch until literally I won't even know what I watched, or how many episodes of a show that I watched. I had no idea. And when my mom was in the facility, I would drive up and I would see her and she would say mean things, snarky, horrible things to me. And when I would leave on my way home, it would just replay like tapes in my head the whole time. I would usually go pick her up, take her out to lunch, drive her up to the beach. She was in Aberdeen at the coast at this time. So I would take her down up to Ocean Shores. We'd have lunch. We'd go to the beach. We'd take these drives. And there was nothing enjoyable about any of this other than I felt better getting her out of the facility, because my mom never got to the point where she wasn't not aware of where she was. So gambling became my thing. On my way home, I'd stop at the casino and I would literally, I didn't care. All you cared about was what was going to come up on the slot machine and was I going to win something. That was my way of dealing with the stress. Julie, can we just go back to that self-care just for a second here? So the thing about all of this stuff on this list, the wine, the gambling, the Netflix, the drugs, the food, the scary thing about all of this is that it worked. It worked. It was really short time, but it worked. In my head, it was working. And that's the danger of these things. So I needed to find another way. So the next slide, I started looking at, I need to get out what I put in. I need to get this energy out of my body. So I started creating an art journal. So instead of just writing all the time, I would take images or my feelings, like this one, alone in a drift on a sea of tears, because I felt isolated. I had nobody, none of my family were there. I felt like I was in a life raft, just floating on a big old ocean, and I didn't know what I was going to do. That middle one, that was my panic attacks. This is what my panic attacks felt like to me. But the one on the right, here comes the sun. And it's going to be all right. There were good things. There were lots of times that I saw positive things, but I was just overwhelmed carrying this load. I also started collaging and painting. I started doing those type of things. That's the next slide, Julie. And deny your dark side. My dark side was being snarky back to my mom, because you know what? She's going to forget I was even here. So I don't really care. And not my proudest moment. I wanted to be this person in the middle where I'm like this caregiver, right? That's just so supportive. And then sometimes just large sheets of paper and just painting emotion and feeling and just letting whatever comes out on paper. But what really helped me is the next slide. I finally went, okay, what are you teaching? What are you preaching? I reached out to my church community and said, look, I can't come into church because I'm gone, but this is going on. Every weekend I go up to visit, and they started calling in. They started checking in. They put me on some prayer chains, and it was wonderful. I felt supported. All good therapists, I say, has a therapist, but I started going to therapy because I knew that I needed to unload. They weren't going to fix it, but I just needed to unload, talk to somebody and unload. And so therapy. And then I reached out to my friends, not my Netflix virtual friends, but my real friends. I was reaching out going, hey, I'm not doing very well. I'm struggling really hard. I need help. And if you could give, this is what you can do for me. You know, call me up once in a while, just kind of check in, just let me know I'm not out here by myself. You can't fix any of this, but, you know, can I call you when I need to just process something, when I've had a hard day? I grew up so independent that you didn't ask for help, but this is what really helped me. But the biggest change in my life with the Alzheimer's was the grief recovery. That's on the next slide, Julie. So the grief recovery method, I sought it out when my fiance completed suicide in 2004. And I remembered the class and I wanted to go back. And so I actually went back to become a specialist to lead the program. But what this program, I went through the training and I worked on my relationship with my mother. I completed all of my unresolved grief with my mom. I looked at all of the things growing up to the point to where Edith was no more, or mom was no more, the dementia had taken over. I looked at our whole relationship and I looked at all the things that I wished I would have said to her, that I wish would have been better or different or more, all of my unrealized hopes and dreams and expectations. I looked at all of those. I wanted a mom who could be my mom, who I thought mothers should be. And now that the dementia, Alzheimer's has taken hold, that wasn't going to happen. My mom was never going to be the mom that I wanted to be. Why she was still alive and present? Oh, I had that hope, that dream that, you know, she would all of a sudden be this wonderful mom. But that was never going to happen. And I was really grieving. This was total unresolved grief. And all of the undelivered communication. If you draw a line and from your earliest memory and you start looking at a relationship with somebody, and let's say this particular thing happened, and like my mom would yell at me about something and I'm a child and I would go, okay. I never said, wait a minute, that's not right. You're yelling at me. I didn't even do this. My sister Janine did this. I didn't do that. We just, we were taught not to argue back. So then when I would go and see my mom, when she wasn't my mom, she was Edith, because my mom had gone away, Edith would say something to me that wasn't very nice. And it would trigger an emotion that took place in my childhood. And it would hurt my feelings and make me so sad. When there was another lady in the facility that used to yell at me when she'd see me, and it rolled off my back. What do I care? I didn't have a relationship with this lady. So all of this, what my mom had done, I unpacked all of this. And I went through the program and it changed. It changed. People at work was noticing the change. I could go and sit and be present with Edith, because my mom wasn't there anymore, but I could sit and be present with Edith. Even if Edith was snarky to me, I could be present with her because it wasn't pulling up all of the undelivered communication that I have had previously. So this technique, this program altered my life in working with my mom. It truly did. And so much that, again, I went back to be certified in this program. So I just wanted to bring that up. The next slide, on Thursday, I'm going to kind of do a Zoom meeting if anybody's interested more in this program and learn more about the grief recovery. I didn't want to talk about that tonight. So we need to take care of ourselves. We need to reach out for those. We need to keep watch. And that one true friend, I'm going to tell you what the difference that it made in my life was the doctor had put me on some medication, and it made everything worse in my brain. And I was talking to my girlfriend at 10 o'clock in the morning. I'm on my second bottle of wine, but to be fair, I've been up since 1 o'clock. I'm crying and I'm overwhelmed. And she asked me, she said, Colleen, she said, remember when you lived in South Carolina and that doctor put you on that medication and it made you behave like erratic and worse? I said, yeah. She goes, yeah, you're acting like that again. I said, I am? She goes, yeah, you are. You need to go see your doctor. And so I went into the doctor, and the medication that they had put me on in South Carolina was Zoloft, and I can't take Zoloft. It makes it worse. And the medication that she'd given me was a derivative of Zoloft. And it made everything worse. So that one friend who really knew me also made a big impact, because she's going, you're going nuts like you did before. It's the medication. And I mean, I was still crazy with everything going on, but it was far better once I got off the medication. So I went through a lot of information really, really quickly. What questions do we have?
Well, I have a question here, Colleen. From Wendy. She says, maybe you'll get to this, but just in case, I can't seem to find any writings on anticipatory grief for people living with dementia versus the caregiver. I see and hear my mom grieving her diagnosis, but I'm not sure how to best support her in the way I would with a cognitively normal person. It feels like if I give her lots of time expressing anger, sadness, denial, bargaining, etc., it's not helpful. I wonder if I should change the subject, which I would never do with a normal person. I would appreciate your thoughts on how to support the person with dementia dealing with their anticipatory grieving. Thank you.
Wow, that's a really difficult place to be. When you said it didn't work, I'm not sure. For me, what happened with me was that it was just triggering me, and I was becoming more and more frustrated. And when we just have to listen to the anger, listen to, asking questions. How would you like it to be different? But diverting the conversation, what I found most helpful with my mom was a point where I could ask her about her childhood, and I found a bunch of old family photos, and I would go, hey mom, who's this? And I knew who it was, right? But she'd look at the picture and go, well, oh, that's your great Aunt Bessie. And then she'd go on to something else. It's just kind of diverted them. I mean, we're not going to be insensitive if they need to talk. We listen. We ask, how would you like it to be different? It's not going to help, because they're going to forget that they had this conversation, and it'll start up later again. But the biggest thing, again, was for me going through the grief recovery and getting rid of all my triggers. It allowed me to be present with my mom, to go over and over how I hate this place down here. They're poisoning me. They're doing this. And then she'd go off on something else. And I hate this place down here. They're poisoning me. They're doing this. It was just this cycle, but it was okay because I could sit with Edith because Edith wasn't triggering my response. It's like, oh my God, Mom, I already told you. The answer is blah, blah, blah. You know, it's just so hard because they're constantly triggering us. So I hope that answers your questions. It's difficult. Anticipatory grief, if you, doesn't necessarily has to be directed a book. I will see what I can find, just a book on anticipatory grief, because it's the same, whether it's cancer or Alzheimer's or dementia, other than getting into the repeated cycle. But the grieving part, that anticipatory, the responses are all pretty much going to be the same. But we need to get rid of all the triggers in you. Was that helpful?
There was another comment, and Wendy says, thank you, Colleen. It was very helpful.
Okay.
And she'll check out the grief recovery program. So we have a comment from one of our facilitators, Carol, who says, in neuroscientist Jill Bolt-Taylor's memoir, My Stroke of Insight, she notes that the physiological lifespan of an emotion in the body and brain is 90 seconds.
Yes.
The sensations, adrenaline, heat in the face, tightness in the throat, rapid heartbeat, rise, peak, and dissipate on their own.
Yes.
So, you know, that may be helpful.
Yeah, that 90 seconds is where, and in that 90 seconds, if we know that, if we can stop and go, okay, what am I responding to? Oftentimes it's fear. And what am I fearing? Am I fearing that something's going to be taken away from me? Am I fearing that I'm not going to get something that I need, that I'm going to lose something? Like if we go off and like start having this anxiety because I didn't send in the paperwork, and the fear is, oh, they're going to take away, Mom's funding, and it's like, no, they're not going to take it away. It might, you can call them and go, I'm faxing it up to you instead of mailing it. I'm doing this. It's to examine it, and what does that mean? Where is the feeling really coming from? And what does it mean? Is this a childhood trigger? Or am I fearful that I haven't done something, or somebody's going to do something to me or to my mom? And how could I look at that? And what's the lesson? What's the lesson here? And it doesn't happen overnight. It takes a while to go, okay, I'm having this intense feeling again. And gee, I wonder what the lesson is. No, but if you can just remember the 90 seconds, and then what did I learn from that when we start coming down? And then pretty soon, the anxiety, you'll first go to, okay, this is happening. How could I look at this differently instead of just emotionally responding? When we're emotionally responding, that's a lot of the trigger points. Those are all those triggers in the relationship, all that unresolved grief coming to the surface.
So can you speak to the anger that sometimes occurs when, an example is that someone has retired, they've retired together, they have all of these retirement plans, and then there is a diagnosis of dementia, and the care partner is unreasonably angry, and she acknowledges that she is unreasonably angry, but it doesn't stop the anger, that this is not fair. Why did this happen to me? Have you?
Yeah, it's unresolved grief.
Exactly.
It's unresolved. It's all of that communication that she's holding on to, right? She's not going, She's not yelling, going, well, if we hadn't done this, we could be doing this and this and this. You know, it's not that we want to attack our loved one, or that I'm saying that we need to attack our loved one. But again, it's that teapot. It's all those thoughts, all of that undelivered communication. It's there. It's not going to go away until we pull it out and look at it. Because let me tell you, I was angry with my mom. My mom was mean. She was mean. And here I am giving up my whole life, my job, my friends, everything to take care of somebody who was very mean to me and that I had no life. I was resentful. Oh my God, can't you appreciate anything that I'm flipping doing for you? Look what I'm doing. Look what and you know, it's not good enough. And oh my gosh, I was angry. But once I went back and completed my relationship to that point, I resolved a lot of those triggers. And so when mom would do that, it didn't impact me. I wasn't responding from those triggers, that source of anger that we're holding on to. Where is it going to go? What are you going to do with it? And you can go, I'm sorry, I'm trying to be a good daughter. You know, I love you. You know, I just was hoping my life would be better. That doesn't do anything to get rid of it. And that's why I say, you know, I feel like I'm a spokesperson, but I can't tell you what a difference going back and working through all these significant emotional triggers, how it helped me to be present, even though it was not great circumstances. Did I enjoy going and see her? No, I didn't. Once it got to the point where I could go out to the car and grab a sweater and come back in, and she'd go, oh, what are you doing here? That's when I realized, you know what? I'm going to take back a weekend, one weekend out of the month, because she's not going to know if I'm there or not. So I'm just going to take the weekend and take care of myself, do something for me. You know, and I had to be okay with that. It was a struggle, but I had to be okay. I think, like I said, going through this program and eliminating all of those triggers, world of difference in how I could be present for Edith where she was. I didn't have to worry about pleasing my mom.
We will occasionally have someone who says, you know, I just wish it was over.
Yes.
And then I feel so guilty because I wish it was over. Can you comment on that?
I'll bet if you ask 100 people, every 100 out of 100 people would go, oh, I had those thoughts. Yeah, I wish it was over. You're not wishing that somebody, it's not malice that I just want them to die. It's not about that. It just is to the point where we're exhausted. And yeah, we're good. We just want, oh my God, we just want it over. When they called me to let me know that my mother had died, my first thought was, oh, good. My first thought was good. But it wasn't that I was doing a happy dance that she died, but she was not stuck in that. And I wasn't stuck. This isn't a disease that is kind to anybody that's in it. That's for sure. And if you're the caregiver, holy moly, this is hard. It's the hardest job in the world. It is the hardest. I am convinced that it is the hardest job in the whole entire world, is caring for someone that you love that's not there under the best circumstances and all of those stresses, dealing with all of those losses simultaneously. Yeah, we want it over. We want it over on a multiple level. We want it done. We just want it done. But that doesn't mean that I hate this person, I want him to die. That's not what it's about.
And
I
then
don't
can
know
you,
anyone who has not had those thoughts.
can you speak to the fact that sometimes once a loved one who has dementia has died, that the individual is concerned about the fact that they are not grieving, that they have such relief that the suffering is over, that the relief replaces the grief?
Yeah, that's the first response, is that sense of release. And what you've actually have done is that you have lost and have processed all the little steps along the way. And so what is left to grieve when they have died? You've done that. So then later we might go, oh my God, what kind of daughter is relieved that it's all over with and I'm not even grieving? Who does that? What kind of daughter does that? I have never cried my mom's passing. I've never cried. I lost her so long ago. I felt sad and I miss her, but I'd already done all my grieving. Remember, grief is the emotional response to the loss. And you've already been working on those little losses all along the way. Now, what I see people have the most problem with in my support groups is, I don't know who I am. I don't know anything. I don't know. I had a routine for years. This was my routine. And now the routine is gone. And in fact, the longer that the routine goes on, the longer you believe it's going to go on. And there's not one person that will go, wow, I was shocked when she died. I wasn't expecting it. Say, what? I mean, I said that. It's like, oh, man, I wasn't expecting Mom to die now because she'd been in this loop for such a long time. Why wouldn't it just keep going on forever? Why not? But it didn't. It ended. But I had already processed all of that. And I knew that just because I'm not crying and carrying on doesn't mean that I'm not going to miss them, that I don't love them. I had already worked on the emotional side of the losses as it was occurring.
Can you speak to the fact that often there is a lot of resentment in the care partner because of the fact that the isolation has occurred and the friends have dropped off, and yet they all show up at the memorial service?
Oh, yeah. When we did my mom's celebration of life, we just had a big picnic in a state park. And there were a lot of people that criticized the way I took care of my mom. But none of them went and saw her. And now they're at the service. And my thought was, I'm glad they're here. I mean, I know what I did. I know all the work I put into my mom, and my mom actually did mean something to them. My brother didn't come see my mom not one time, not once. And I went, well, he has to live with that. I don't. He does. So you don't make it about you. They pull away because they don't know what to say. They don't know how to fix it. We're constantly complaining and carrying on because it's repeating, and they're like going, oh my God, she's talking about that again. They want Colleen. Where's Colleen? Where's fun-loving Colleen at? And she's not here. She's stressed. And so they they go off. My brother couldn't handle watching my mom that way. He disappeared. I mean, he didn't come over and see her not one time. And then tried to put it on me. Well, you should have told me mom was getting bad. I'm like, that's not my job. That's your job. Stay in contact. I had enough to do. So it's, people handle things differently. And what you have to remember, that it's not about you. It really isn't about you. They're not doing this to you. They're dealing with whatever's going on in their own brains and their own hearts processing. It's difficult when they all leave, and then because they don't know what to do, and now they have the service, and now they're going, well, at least I can be supportive here. I can go and say, it's over, but I'm here. I'm still here. And oftentimes they have no words for you why they disappeared, why they backed away, because they don't even know. I mean, sometimes like my brother would never say, I couldn't handle mom watching her that. He didn't even go there. He blamed me, but that was okay because I knew what I had done and it was about my relationship. He had to deal with his decisions and what he did. It didn't impact me. So I could do one or two things: not have a brother, not talk to him ever again, and lose my mom and lose my brother or lose my sister or lose my best friend. You know, I could have double, triple the losses. But what I had to come to terms with, what I understood was everyone's going to respond the way they're going to respond, and it's unique. It's all built on their relationship with that person and what they feel that they should be doing or not doing. If I can't fix it for you, then I'm inadequate and I'm not a good friend, and I'm just not going to be around.
Thank you, Colleen. I think you've answered some really important questions for us and given us some really good information. So anybody that would like to attend Colleen's Zoom meeting on Thursday, you can learn a little bit more about this grief recovery. And we all know that we are suffering grief as we are caring for our loved ones. So thank you all for attending.
Thank you for having me.
We appreciate you. Thanks, everyone.